Hello and welcome to the special interview with Mark Shofer, the Deputy Director General of Asia and Pacific, and the man who's shaped Israel's India policy over the past decade. Good to have you on WION.
Thank you. Lovely to be here.
At the outset, I want to ask you about the visit that's making headlines both in India and Israel. Prime Minister Narendra Modi is coming here. How does Israel see this? What does it signify for you?
Well, clearly this is a visit of historic proportions. It's the first time ever that a Prime Minister of India has visited Israel, and it's happening on the 25th anniversary of the establishment of our diplomatic relations. So in view of the developments, the wonderful developments of Israeli-Indian relations in the last 25 years, I think it's coming to a sort of a culmination with this visit, and we're really looking forward to it.
And who do you credit for this shift? It's being described as an open admission now of what used to be a hitherto hidden affair.
I think we have to be careful of talking of shifts. If we look at the relationship between Israel and India in the last 25 years, I think we can find a steady graph, an upward trend, if you will, of growing relations in all fields of human endeavor. Culture, political interaction, economic interaction, etc., etc. And in a way, it's a sort of a natural progression that we've reached where we've reached. And I think it signifies more than anything else a complete and utter normalization of relations between the two countries. And I'm glad that we are where we are.
And do you believe that the personal equation between the two prime ministers had something to do with it?
Well, I think it's important that there's a chemistry between leaders of any two countries in the world, and there's no doubt about it that Prime Minister Modi and Prime Minister Netanyahu have a good relationship. But I think we've had also good relationships with other Indian leaders over the years. But I do believe that this is really something that we can and should build on. I think we both have to benefit. We have a great deal to benefit from in this relationship, and I think that this visit will certainly bring that to the fore.
And what's on the agenda?
Well, we're putting at the top of the agenda as agreement between both countries the issues that face the majority of Indian people and the majority of Israeli people, actually, which is the water and the agricultural sectors, which we believe we can work very closely with in all fields: new technologies, reclamation of water, wastewater, creation of water, etc. And I think that both countries, both peoples, have an enormous amount to gain from in this relationship on the field of agriculture and water. At the end of the day, food security should be and is #1 priority on any country's list, and it is certainly the case in India today and in Israel.
It's interesting. Every time I speak to a diplomat, he talks about the issues that you mentioned and leaves out defense.
Because, as I said many times in the past, also when I was in India, countries, generally speaking, don't talk about their defense relationships, and I have no intention whatsoever of changing that approach. There is a defense relationship. It's not a secret. It's not secret that there is a defense relationship. India has defense relationship with many countries around the world, and Israel is one of them. It's true, but I think that what we are looking for right now is to put the emphasis on what the peoples themselves can benefit from. And the first and foremost is of course agriculture and water. I mean, we mustn't forget ever that more than 600-700 million Indian people are living off the land in one form or another. That's a huge amount of people, and if we can be of assistance in working together in creating some of the technologies and make them useful for India, of course that's enormously important for both countries. So I think that's what we're going to be sticking with in this visit and in the entire relationship as we move forward.
Are you saying that the Barak 8 and the Spike anti-tank missile deals won't come up?
I'm not talking about the defense relationship in any form. Defense will not take the major brunt of this visit by any form or any means. We are looking at other issues, as I've said before. And,
I know, but we've discussed this in the past. Yes. But why are the two sides then so cagey and wary of discussing? There is a perception that, yes, there's been a strong, old relationship between India and Israel in the sector of defense, but they don't want to talk about it.
As I said earlier, and I can repeat it, and of course we can continue in this vein, that no countries in the world talk in public about their defense relationship. And I'm not going to change that approach in this particular interview or in future interviews with whoever. But if you ask me what the thrust of this visit is all about, what the brunt of this visit is all about, it is on agriculture, it is on water, and at the end of the day, food security is no less important than any other type of security for any countries around the world, including, and perhaps especially, India and Israel.
There's a lot of talk of Israeli companies planning to make in India. How much do they propose to do that, and what are the concerns?
Well, we have taken on the Make in India issue in the highest. We understand what it's all about. We're trying to work with it, and more Israeli companies are moving to India for manufacturing purposes. We're trying to elevate this as much as we possibly can. The Make in India approach is one of the most important approaches that the Indian government has taken, and we plan to find ourselves involved in this. I must say that Israeli industry and Israeli technology in general is predicated on technologies, on high-tech, on super technologies and things of that nature. And we have never found in our working with India that we have a difference of, that everything can be done at eye-to-eye level. We look at each other, we talk to each other, and immediately the technologies are incorporated into Indian manufacturing components. The reason being that the level of the engineers you have, the level of the engineers that we have, is the same level, it's identical. So it's not a question of trying out new technologies, it's a question of working with current technologies, developing them. And there's no better country to do this with than with India.
Is sharing IP a concern? The business environment? Do you see more ease of doing business?
We work closely with India. We have to learn the culture. Many Israeli industries do need to learn the Indian culture. And I think they're working at it. There's a number of over 400 or 500, if I'm not mistaken, companies actually working in India right now as we talk. So I think that we've overcome that over the years. Let's not forget that just 25 years ago we had no relationship whatsoever, and that this relationship has been growing, and that Israeli industry found itself in other areas of the world, in Europe, in the United States. So to a large extent Asia in general, but certainly India, is a new proposition for them. And so it will always take time to learn the Indian culture, the Indian way of life, how Indian business works, how the system works. And it's a complex system you have in India.
So you're saying you have no concerns right now?
There are always concerns. First of all, I think concern number one is how do we really put the ideas into practice? This is something that troubles me most of all. We have so many ideas on the table. We have so many new and valuable issues which I think could work for both countries, especially in the fields I mentioned, but not only. Not only. We can go wider afield. There's telephony, there's healthcare, there's plenty of technologies, technological components that we should be looking at. And I think that what we need to do is how to bring these to fruition. This is what is my major concern, not to discuss what the issues are, because they run a whole gamut, but how to make them work, how to elevate them from the idea stage into the concrete stage. And this is what I think we have to be putting our emphasis on from this visit and after this visit.
Let's talk about people. How do you respond to reports that say that the newly declared Jews from India are being treated as, and these are not my words, as second-class citizens, and they're being used to populate occupied territories by Israel?
There are a number of different Jewish organizations or institutions, I would say, actually, probably best to say people of Jewish origin, coming from India. We have the three famous ones, the Baghdadi Jews, the Kochini Jews, and of course the Bnei Israel. They've been incorporated in Israel as Jews for many, many years now. We have somewhere in the region of 80 to 100,000 Indian Jews right now in Israel, which are contributing enormously to Israeli society, as they contributed, I think, to Indian society over the ages. There is a new group which we are learning with and working with called the Bnei Menashe from the north of India, and it's a new group for us. It's being tackled with Israel at a number of different places throughout the world where groupings are saying that they are Jewish and coming to live in Israel. So we are working on that right now, and we will continue to work on it. It has religious significance, it has movement of people's significance also for India. And it has significance here. So I think that these are the things which are still in progress, in action, rather than have actually been finished yet.
Okay. India is your biggest defense buyer. China is your biggest trading partner. How do you propose to balance this equation going forward?
Well, as I said, I'm not going to refer to the defense relationship we have with India. We have a very large relationship with China in the civilian field. which is, of course, higher than that of India. It's true, but I wouldn't say that China is our biggest import. Actually, it's not our biggest trading partner. Our biggest trading partner actually is the European Union. But having said that, I don't think that we compare in any way. We do not, must not, and will not make a comparison between our commercial relationship with India and our commercial relationship with China. No, there's no clash whatsoever. In the same way that India has an excellent relationship with much of the Arab world and with Israel. Israel has a wonderful relationship with India and with China. We do not see this as a clash in any way whatsoever.
That's the direction Israel is also moving towards. I read reports today that Israel is building economic ties with Saudi Arabia and isolating Iran is a common goal. So that shouldn't be a clash.
And it shouldn't be a clash. And in fact, it also shouldn't be a clash that one can develop relations with India and with China at the same time. And that is what not only we are doing, but the entire world is doing. So we are not different from Europe, the United States, or elsewhere that is developing a relationship with China and with India. And they're at the same time, and the one is not contingent on the other. Of course, our relationship, which it does or does not exist, or reports you may or may not have read, not every report is 100% true 100% of the time. Of course, Israel wants a good relationship with the Arab world. It's not been a secret that we should do that. We live here in the Middle East. They are our immediate neighbors, and it's a natural thing to do. But over the decades, India has had a wonderful relationship with the Arab world, and over the last 25 years, a wonderful relationship with Israel. And we don't see any type of contradiction between the two, in the same way that there is no contradiction between our relations with China and our relations with India.
What about Pakistan?
Israel has zero relations with Pakistan. It has never had a serious relationship, or any relationship really, with Pakistan. I've said this before and I'll say it again, one of our two countries has an embassy in Pakistan, and it's not Israel. We have no diplomatic relations with Pakistan. We have no contacts with the Pakistanis. We place in the India-Pakistan conflict 100% support behind India, hook, line and sinker, and we are not asking for anything in return.
Well, there were talks, the two foreign ministers, I understand, met in Turkey in 2006?
No, it's something like, no, it's much earlier.
This was more than a decade back, but then those things were put on the back burner after the Mumbai attacks. But you've been quoted as saying on more than one occasion that we are ready to establish a relationship with Pakistan if it meets us halfway.
Well, India, first of all, has a relationship with Pakistan, so I'm sure that India is not against Israel having a relationship with Pakistan.
I'm not talking about, I'm asking about...
We don't have a relationship with Pakistan. Our foreign policy, Israel's foreign policy, is predicated on the fact, like every country's foreign policy in the world, that we would like to widen it as much as possible. What is important is that in widening any foreign policy and foreign relationships that we have, it should not and must not impinge on other relationships that we have. And that is really a fact. Our relationship with India is so wide-ranging, it is so all-encompassing, that under no circumstances will we develop any relationship with any country in the world which will impinge on our relations with India. And that really is the be-all and end-all of any relationships we have with everyone. So with Pakistan there is nothing. The amount of times I've been quoted about some meeting that happened well over a decade ago as if it happened yesterday, whereas the world has moved on enormously from then. Not only Israel has moved on, not only South Asia has moved on, but Pakistan is in a different place as well, and you know that and we all know that. So I think we have to look at things in the current perspective. We will always continue to work with India, we will always continue to discuss with India whatever we do in South Asia, in the same way that India talks to us about what it's doing.
And in the current perspective, China has invested a lot of money in Pakistan and has both strategic and business interests in that country. So it's all, well, it's a complicated relationship. You don't want to talk about defense, I understand.
It's actually quite easy, if you don't mind me saying so. We have a relationship with China, and China has its own relationships. I don't see how that brings us into the China's relationship.
And you sell anti-missile systems to India, and India is pitted against these neighbors. Well, it is complicated, isn't it?
I think the international system is a complicated system in any field, and you obviously, from a journalistic point of view, do like to harp on the defence relationship, and that's understandable. I'm not decrying that in any way. But the fact of the matter is, in the same way that that Russia has a relationship with India and with China. And Russia's relationship with India goes back much beyond ours, including its strong, extremely strong defence relationship. So I think it's complex, but not too complex. I think that, like India, Israel wishes to have a wide-ranging set of relations. India has a wide-ranging set of relations. It's normal. We have to know how to interplay them, and I think that we do that well in our joint bilateral relations.
Okay, let's talk about issues closer to home. The Defense Minister of Israel recently said that we are closer to achieving a peace deal than ever before. What has changed?
Well, I think that a number of things have changed in the Middle East. I don't know whether on what he's basing himself. He didn't ask me on that particular issue, but I must say that what you're seeing is a change of government in the United States with a new approach to what's happening in the Middle East, and you're certainly seeing a change of emphases in the Gulf world, where I think that to a large extent the important countries of the Gulf view as their biggest threat to them the Iranian regime, which is the same as what we have been saying for years. So we both have the same focus, the same enemy, if you will, the same danger facing us both. And that, of course, brings to new realizations. Now, for years, many in the Arab world have been saying is that the biggest threat to them is Israel, etc. But I think in recent years, with the terrorism that's going on, with the horrors of Syria, with Al-Qaeda and Taliban on the one hand, especially in Asia, but also with the ISIS, what we call Daesh, on the other hand, in this part of the world, the threats are different. Israel is not threatening a single country in the Arab world, not one. And I think that now everybody is in the same realization that we have to tackle this extremism together. By ourselves, we will not succeed.
Well, this shifting of priorities towards Iran also helps Israel in the Palestinian context. But you mentioned the regime change in the US, and after 8 years of fraught ties with Barack Obama, this was welcome here in Israel. But the visit of the US president did not quite go as expected. There were uncomfortable moments.
I'm not sure where you get that information from, but let's say I think it's necessary to understand, and many people outside the Israel-United States relationship don't always understand it to the full, in all honesty. The relationship is so strong. It is so institutionalized. It goes back, it is almost historical in many respects. That I think that one has to divorce oneself from saying that everything that went on between Israel and the last democratic presidency was terrible and now everything is good. It wasn't like that. There's always an undercurrent of discussion. Sometimes it's better, sometimes it's worse, sometimes the chemistry is better, sometimes the chemistry is worse. But Israel and the United States are deep, close allies. They have been for decades and they will always be. So I'm not quite sure that one should look at it as black and white. It's not black and it's not white. This is a development of changes of policies, changes of governments. It happens everywhere. Happened in India, happens in Israel. Governments change, policies have nuances. But at the end of the day, despite what you said earlier, that the fact that it helps Israel...
And allies change, there's intelligence sharing sometimes with Russia.
And there are movements, interests. A country doesn't have any permanent... the only thing the country has are permanent interests. And we have an interest in our security. We have an interest in peace in the Middle East. We have an interest in the cessation of terrorism against people in Israel. Just this weekend, a woman soldier was brutally knifed to death in Jerusalem. So we're looking at who is funding, who is behind this horror, who is behind this terrorism, in the same way that India is facing horrors of terrorism emanating from Pakistan, be it Lashkar-e-Taiba, be it homegrown or whatever. We are facing a world of extremism around us, both Israel, India, and much of the Arab world. And we don't have the luxury of failing in this test of defeating it. We don't have that luxury. We cannot fail.
You're a seasoned diplomat. You talk in generalities. You never answer my questions.
I think I've answered every question, but still.
All right. So how does Israel see the widening gulf in the Arab states, among the Arab states?
First of all, it's not new. The Arab world has never always been an extremely monolithic bloc in any sense. I think that I wouldn't talk of widening gulfs right now. I really would talk about the rise of extremism, of Islamist, and I make the difference between Islamic and Islamist fundamentalism in the Middle East. It is growing, or it has been growing quite rapidly, unfortunately, for some years now. And you look at what's happening in the horrors of Syria. 500,000 people dead, massacred, murdered, to not talk about the displacement of entire cities and villages, the use of gas warfare and chemical warfare, what's happening in Iraq. One looks around us and one sees such horrors that it's almost unbearable. And I think that we really need to, and I think the Arab world is changing. I think there's no doubt about that. The realization that where the real threat's coming from is not Israel. And that's not talking in platitudes, it's talking in concrete terms. The threat is emanating from the Shia Iranian regime, which is not the Shia Muslims, it's the Iranian regime, and I make a complete distinction between the regime and the people of Iran, and the threat is coming from the extremism within Syria and within Iraq of the ISIS, the Daesh, and other extremist organizations which are supportive of it. And this is really what we are fighting against. And you are too, actually, in India. You absolutely are too. I'm not evading any question. I was ambassador in Mumbai, in Delhi, when you had the attack in Mumbai in 2008. That was a disastrous, tragic, horrendous attack on freedom-loving people, many of whom were Muslim, incidentally, emanating from a rogue operation or whatever in Pakistan. So we are all facing this type of terrorism, and we will fight it. And if we find new allies to do so, we will do that.
Well, Iran too saw a terror attack recently. I'm just playing the devil's advocate here, and they're saying that this was at the behest of the Saudis. So it's basically their word against yours.
It's not their word against ours. Iran is a regime which supported terror for many years now. Iran is a regime which openly supports terror. It openly calls for the eradication of the world's only Jewish state. It doesn't hide that. It openly calls Israel bacteria, in the most famous Jews bacteria, in the most famous Hitlerite terminology imaginable. I don't think that it's very easy. Very few countries, if any, I can't think of one right now in the world, maybe North Korea, would look at Iran as being any type of regime which is anything less than abominable in every way. So from our point of view, Iran is very, very much the harbinger of most of the evil here in the Middle East. They've taken a position for no apparent reason that you can think of except for ideology, of the eradication of the Jewish state, of hate, of subversiveness, and of usage of trying to achieve the means to eradicate through nuclear weapons, etc.
Let me come back to the talks of the peace process. Are Prime Minister Netanyahu and President Abbas meeting in Washington next month?
I don't know.
You don't know?
I don't know.
Okay. And do you see a role for India in this conflict?
I think that we have a number of different international players that are involved in the Middle East, trying to arrange for processes to move forward. We have the United States, we have the Quartet, as you know, we have the Europeans to a certain extent, although there's quite a lot of turmoil there. I think India can do quite a lot if I'm really pushed and asked. I think they can do something on the people-to-people attitude in bringing peoples closer together. As you might have noticed during your stay here, there's an enormous respect in Israel for India. In every form, Indian culture, Indian history, Indian mentality, Indian approach to life on the one hand, and we know and we understand and we have no problems whatsoever about India's relationship with much of the Arab world. And so I think that possibly there might be a role there to play on the people-to-people, which is crucial, incidentally, in the building of any relationships between Israel and the Arab world, including Israel and the Palestinians. Because at the end of the day, two leaders can sign pieces of paper, and I'm hopeful that that will happen, hopefully really not in the too distant future, but they can sign pieces of paper. If it doesn't get translated down to the people, it cannot last. So we have to find ways of overcoming the mistrust and the distrust that exists on both sides of the equation. And perhaps India could be of some help in that, on that level, I would say. But another entrance of another player into the political quagmire, I'm not sure that the Indians want that. I haven't heard any wish from the Indian side, so
right.
It's moot.
And incidentally, I did speak to a lot of people, both in Ramallah, Jerusalem, and Tel Aviv over the past 8 days. Not one of them said that they saw peace coming in their lifetime, and they're blaming the politicians for that.
Well, you know, there is a lot of distrust and despair and I think you might find that in Israel to a certain extent as well. But I think that moods change when there is movement on the ground. Moods do change. People are a little bit exasperated right now because they don't see the movement, and there is certainly not outward movement in the direction of peace in the Middle East. But my knowledge, as being somebody who was involved in the Oslo Accords, is that even then there was a great deal of people were down. People didn't see any movement. And then came the Accords at the time in the early 90s, and the moods changed on both sides of the equation. So I think that the reason for the despondency right now is quite simply because people don't see the movement or don't see any movement. And when movement is more open...
Is there a hardening of positions, given the statements, or is this just posturing before talks?
I don't know if there's a hardening of positions. That what there certainly is a breakdown of trust. I think that I can sit here for a long time and say how we view the Palestinians and say Israel good, Palestinians bad, and that would be just... and I could do that quite easily, and I don't think that'll move us much forward. And that's why I sometimes get very exasperated when I see that the Palestinians say that Israel is to blame for all evils, everything that is bad. It's a pointless exercise, and it doesn't bring us any closer. It certainly doesn't bring any closer this attacks on Israel in the United Nations or in international fora. It just puts the Israeli people further afield. So if the Palestinians really wanted to move forward, I think that we have to stop this. They should stop this sort of international organizational warfare, if you will, against Israel. We're just one Jewish country in the world. We're not more than that. And as a result of that, we need to work together.
Incidentally, many critics have said that if you question Israel's policy on anything, you're branded an anti-Semite.
That's a famous formula which is branded in England called the Livingstone formula. I can't remember a single person ever who has said if you criticize Israel, you're an anti-Semite. It's just said that is what we said. But if you can prove if anybody could show to me a serious Israeli person, not some fly-by-night extremist on one side or the other, a serious Israeli leader, diplomat, politician, or whatever, who has said that anybody who criticizes Israel is an anti-Semite, then I will take off my hat and eat it. Because frankly, it has never been said. It's only quoted as if it's been said. It's what is commonly known as the urban myth. You can criticize Israel. In fact, this is an open country. If anybody is critical of Israel, it's the Israelis themselves. We are probably the most self-critical nation and people in the world, and that's good. It's healthy. We have a vibrant and open democracy here, and that's what causes you to pick up any newspaper in the morning and read massive attacks on the government, and it doesn't matter whether the government is from left or right. Nobody serious in Israel has ever said that if you criticize Israel, you are an anti-Semite, unless you are an anti-Semite. Of which there are quite a few around the world, unfortunately, although not in India, I must say, but certainly in other parts of the world. In that case, one should call a goose a goose. An anti-Semite is an anti-Semite, but criticism of Israel is by no means perceived in Israel as being anti-Semitic.
I'm going to wrap it on that note, and thank you very much,
and
all the best in your endeavors to
Thank you so much.
Peace.
Thank you very much indeed. Lovely to meet you.
Same here.